Hi, jewells68 here for Talk to Me Tuesday on Tuesday, June 13th. I have a couple of things to show you. First thing is I finished a blanket. I know I didn't have anything last week for Project Linus. Well, starting Wednesday night, I started a project and I got it done in time to turn in. It was a quilt as you go project. I'm going to go back in time right now and tell you a bit about that whole process and how I put that blanket together. And then at the end of this video, I'll show you some pictures taken at Project Linus that that are after it's washed. So I'm going to take you back in time now. Hi, Jules here. It's Friday and I am recording this because I'm going to be turning what's behind me in tomorrow at Project Linus. So I did finish something this week. I started this Wednesday night. I'm really glad I tried it. It was just a total experiment. So someone donated one long strip of this fabric right here. So this was all one long strip and right next to the selvage. So I cut that off and I cut it in half, actually is what I did. I cut the selvage, cut it in half, and then cut the selvage off. And this is also donated fabric. You've seen it before on the back of a quilt. I've used it like to make a solid back bigger or something. I can't remember, but I have used it before as backing. And yeah, so somebody donated this big long strip and nobody wanted it. So I took it. I thought surely I can piece it with something else. I didn't even, I pieced it a little bit. This was a quilt as you go project. Kind of sort of my first one. I was going to do a quilt as you go in strips and had everything cut out. Had started getting my batting cut out, and then I was using remnants of batting, little bits and things that I had left over. And then it suddenly dawned on me that for what I was planning, I had a solid one big piece for the back, and I thought that's not going to work with little strips of batting. I need a whole piece of batting. Like, there are methods you can do that, but it wasn't going to work with what I was planning to do. So I had to rethink it. So I dug through my batting, and I didn't actually have a piece that was big enough. So I say that as I'm looking at one that I think might be big enough right now. I don't know how I missed it. I can see it now, but I couldn't see it before. Don't even know. Anyway, I'm glad I couldn't find it before because I never would have thought of this. But I had a fleece blanket, purchased blanket. It was not new. It had been used and washed. Solid navy blue. And I decided to use it as the batting and back of the quilt and just sew the strips on all one strip at a time and quilt as you go. So that's what I did. So this, you can see the solid fleece and you can see the grid line marks. I used a pale blue thread. You can see those. And I'll take a picture of the back, but it's really hard to see the stitching. So I started right here. I spray basted this section to the fleece just to keep it from shifting around very carefully. Made sure there were no puckers of fleece in the back. And then I stitched this on. I put it selvage or sides lined up, not selvage, but raw edges lined up, right sides together. So folded this way, right sides together. Sewed right here, pressed it this way. I did pin it because it is fleece. Pressed it this way, and then added the next section on, pinned it really good going down here, with this folded this way, stitched it this way directly to the fleece, folded it over, did the same with this, did the same with this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces of fabric, quilt top done. I cut it, I trimmed it square, And then I decided for fun to try, I've never tried curved edges on a quilt before. I've done it on fleece blankets. So I used a plate and just used my rotary cutter right around that to trim it round. I had a little bit of trouble with the binding, but not a whole lot. I just had to go really slowly. So basically I put this down, I spray basted this down, and I left one step out. I stitched down these vertical lines to make all of that nice and neat on the fleece and not moving around. Then I added this. When I pressed this back out, I stitched down the vertical lines. Basically making the basis for a grid. Put this down, stitch down this line right here, stitch the line down here, so that it was sort of an even grid, kind of sort of even grid. Then, before I did any of the trimming, I turned it sideways and went across, just using the pre-printed fabric as a guide. Did my walking foot, used my walking foot for this whole quilt. So the entire quilt was made with my walking foot on the machine. Went all the way across, la 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 la, and then I trimmed it and rounded the corners and bound it. Now I'm excited to show you the binding because in the same batch of donations, somebody donated 2 of these chunks of fabric. Very cute, right? However, when I started, so I took it and brought it home because nobody else wanted it. Then I got it home and I realized why no one had taken it, because it's cut along with the selvage on the side, because it's cut along the yardage instead of across selvage to selvage. This grouping of numbers and letters and animals is the only one you get to see. So you can't really do an alphabet quilt because all you have is XYZ. And then the next row is JKLM. And then you've got the same batch of numbers each time. And then you have XYZ again and JKLM. Well, I'm not going to do an alphabet quilt with an eighth of the alphabet. So I ended up using this for my binding. So this is a second piece, so I'll probably use it for binding another quilt because it's really cute and multicolored and brights. And that, I cut it into 2 1/4 inch strips since I didn't have any batting in there. I felt like I didn't need it quite as wide, and it worked out perfectly. So this whole thing was an experiment. I love how it turned out. I even, as I was attaching the binding to the back, because I attach it to the binding, I attach the binding to the back first, machine stitch it down, and then fold it over to the front and machine stitch it down, since it's going, I don't know who's going to get it, and I want them to be able to just toss it in the wash. So I machine bind the whole thing. So while I was machine stitching it to the back first, when I got to the right hand bottom corner, I stuck my Project Linus label in there. I don't know if you can see that or not. And attached it, I pinned it here to keep it flat, and then basically inserted it right in here where I was stitching the binding in, so that I only had to stitch 3 seams. You know, I only had to hand stitch, you know, 2/3 of the amount that I normally do. So it's all done. I started it Wednesday night. I just now finished it and I'm on my lunch break, but I got to get ready and go back to work. Yeah, so pretty exciting. I'll take pictures. I'll try to get it outside for pictures, but I didn't have time to go hang up all my apparatus and stuff. Going to my June meeting tomorrow. I am still going to be one blanket behind my goal, because I did not turn one in May, because I didn't go in May, and I didn't have one done. So I'm still going to be one behind, but I'm okay with that. One behind I can handle, and now that I've tried this and had such good success with it, I have one more fleece blanket over here that's sort of tie-dye looking that's going to make a great back. So I'm really excited about what scraps I can put together to attach to that for another quick quilt, and hopefully I can get 2 turned in July. That'll be my goal. So I'm going to send you back to the future, back to Tuesday, and say goodbye from Friday. Bye! And we're back on Tuesday, June 13th. Um, and something that happened while I was at Project Linus was a quilt teacher, I guess retired or something, I don't know. Anyway, she donated a bunch of stuff. There was all sorts of fabric and things like that. So I did get some fabric that kind of goes with stuff I already have. She also had some DVDs, which I'm going to watch this and then I'm going to pass it on to somebody else. It's Charlotte Angotti and Debbie Caffrey lead you on a humorous yet informative journey as they show you how they design and construct quilts. Surprise Yourself is the name of the video. I figured I'll just watch it and pass it on to another quilter. There was also a bunch of class samples. I'm assuming these are things that she used when she was demonstrating something in classes. She did a lot of teaching. So the result of that was a hodgepodge of all different size blocks. So I told them whatever isn't claimed by the end of the meeting, whatever orphan blocks are left, I'll take those home and I'll try to put them into some quilts to bring back for Linus. The issue is some of the fabrics are fine and will work with kid fabrics. They're just batiks or whatever. And a lot of them are very kind of adult, kind of oriented, adult, not like XXX adult, but as in not fun for kids. Here's an example. There were two really big blocks, like we're talking 14 and 15 inch blocks. And I can work with it once I add, you know, some stuff to some other blocks. But it's just very muted, you know, very dark. And I'd like to do kids' quilts bright. So we'll have to come up with some fun sashing and stuff for those. So there's three really big blocks. There's a pretty large assortment of right around 9.5 inch or so, 8.5 to 9.5 inch blocks. All different patterns. Just all different patterns. All different colors. You know, some of them are, you know, really, really fun, and some of them are kind of drab. So it's going to be a challenge to put them all together, but I think I'm up to the challenge. So anyway, big stack of those. And then these are more like, I want to say these are more like 10.5 inch-ish to 11.5 inch blocks. There's a big stack of those. And actually a number of them are the same blocks, so I think I ought to be able to, you know, here's a, what do you call it, 9 patch on point. There's all kinds of blocks in here. Then we have more like, I don't know, 7.5 to 8.5 inch blocks. This one's super fun. I wish there was more of this. I'll have to figure out what this is and see if I can make some more to at least get a row out of it. There's even one or two with some kid-friendly, you know, clearly geared towards kids fabrics. So ought to be able to do something with some of these. Big stack of those. And then we get even smaller. We have 3.5, 4.5, a bunch of hourglass blocks. Well, a bunch, 3 or 4. All different kinds of, she was clearly just teaching techniques. Here's another little mini 9 patch on point. A little mini flower basket. These are all 3.5, 4.5, up to 6.5 inches. So we're talking, I don't know, I have a ton of blocks here. Oh, and then there's a whole pile that's all sections of blocks. Probably the first one I'm going to do something with is these, because there's 4 of these. So I should be able to, there's 4 that match. I should be able to put those together into a 9 patch with some coordinating batik fabric to make a nice big block to go in with the big blocks. But there's also some that are the same that don't match. So just from all different classes over the years. Here's another one even bigger. Here's another one even bigger. Here's a couple of these, you know. yeah, so these are all down into sections of blocks. And so I'll just have to figure out a way to put them into blocks. Dresden, or here's a Dresden circle, I guess, Dresden plate, I don't know. One of these. An almost finished basket block. And then one little lone tired little thing. Yeah, so that's gonna be fun. I'll start figuring that out. Yeah, I'll start figuring that out hopefully soon. So I'm gonna be set for a while. I don't need to worry about making quilts from scratch. I just need to start taking some of these blocks and finding a way to piece them together. And then finally, oh, and then I also managed to grab this bit of yardage. It looks like it's about 2 yards, so I ought to be able to get a good Linus back out of that. Behind me, you'll see the rail fence, which has turned into sort of a basket weave pattern. So there's that. That top is, I would say that top is done. I'm probably going to put a small border around it in a solid. So I'm going to put some pictures here at the end of that finished blanket. I look forward to watching all your videos, and I will see you next week. Bye!